If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here. Chapter 31 Summer Sun Preparations, Part 1.
Alright, let's go over the checklist one more time.
Twilight eventually said while looking down at Spike as their chariot began to make its final descent towards the town of Ponyville. Spike nodded eagerly and reached for said checklist, while Rainbow stuck out her tongue with a pleh sound.
Yeah, Twilight, you've had the little guy check it over like 100 times since we sat down in the chariot. I wasn't even listening and I can recite the stupid thing from memory. I think we get it.
She whined out while looking at Spike in pity.
This mirror's gonna be the death of you, little guy.
Twilight huffed indignantly and scrunched up her face.
Why does this surprise you? You've known me for how long now? It doesn't surprise me,
Rainbow replied with a roll of her eyes.
You do this a lot. I just don't always have to be within earshot. Also, it's been about 6 or 7 years, I think.
Twilight sighed and shrugged noncommittally.
Alright, fine. We'll have to go over it as we're performing the tasks on it anyway, so I guess I can satisfy myself with that.
She relented before looking down at Ponyville uneasily. Rainbow took on a somewhat concerned expression at seeing the anxiety enter Twilight's eyes. She shifted slightly closer to her without really thinking about it.
You still worried about that whole Nightmare Moon thing?
She asked carefully, to which Twilight could only nod.
I just know it's going to happen. And I need to find some proof to send back to Celestia so she can make sure she's ready,
she said, her volume rising significantly as scenario after horrifying scenario began to play out in her mind. Rainbow was quick to respond, thankfully, shifting over slightly and putting a hoof on Twilight's shoulder.
Hey, don't worry. Celestia's made of some really tough stuff, and I know that one first hoof. I'm sure if Nightmare Moon suddenly pops up, Celestia will give her a smackdown and send her packing faster than you can say checklists are the best,
she said reassuringly before Twilight shrugged off her hoof.
I'm not so sure.
Aw, cheer up, Twilight, Spike began, patting Twilight's shoulder with a claw.
Celestia arranged for us to stay in a library while we're on this trip, so we'll have plenty of books to go through when we're done with our checkups and stuff.
Twilight smiled back at him and nodded. She still didn't look convinced, but she did look a bit more at ease, if nothing else.
Yeah, I guess. Let's get down there and get started then. Now you're talking.
Rainbow pumped her hoof in the air for emphasis.
I'm getting bored just sitting here. Let's get down there so I can figure out what clouds need busting and where the Wonderbolts are hanging so I can make sure they see my awesomeness.
Twilight rolled her eyes and play-punched Rainbow's shoulder.
Right. Just make sure you showing off doesn't prevent you from, doing your job here.
Rainbow rubbed her shoulder with a slight wince.
Ow, it won't. Your punches have gotten harder, you know that?
She said with a proud smirk forming on her face. Twilight chuckled lightly before reaching over and yanking Rainbow Dash into an affectionate noogie.
Well, I learned from the best,
she jeered while forcefully rubbing her hoof into Dash's mane.
Ow! Hey, stop that!
Rainbow protested, though her pleased laugh signaled that she took some form of enjoyment from Twilight's physical assertion to their discussion. Twilight kept on assaulting the prismatic mane for a moment before letting Rainbow go with a victorious grin. Rainbow dusted herself off and then smirked back at Twilight.
A fressa later? If we have time,
Twilight answered, before she looked down. Realizing that they were now touching down on the ground, her smile faded. The wheels of the chariot creaked slightly as they rolled along, parting the grass and kicking up some dirt.
If we have time.
Rainbow's own smile faded somewhat before she hopped out of the chariot when it came to a complete stop. She landed on all fours and gave a languid stretch before looking around at the quaint town. Her eyebrows rose as she took it all in.
Not quite what I was expecting. I like it,
she muttered under her breath. Twilight hopped out as well, Spike following closely. She turned back to Dash curiously once Spike had the list out and ready to go.
You coming with us, or do you want to get a lay of the sky first?
Rainbow turned and shook her head.
Yeah, I'll tag along with you for now. These clowns ain't going anywhere, and I can bust them up in 10 seconds if I really want to.
She said casually before falling into step next to Twilight. Twilight giggled slightly.
I'd like to see that.
She said, as if to challenge her friend.
You will. Later.
Rainbow smirked before her eyes turned fully forward. She paused almost instantly when she spotted a certain pony a ways up the road, prancing along with a happy smile and looking like she didn't have a care in the world. She was also pink. Very pink. And also very familiar. Rainbow blinked as a memory went through her head.
Hey, I recognize her.
She muttered.
Recognize who?
Twilight asked before looking towards where Rainbow was looking.
You mean her? Yeah, she was in my first flash.
Rainbow explained before picking up the pace in her trot to a full-blown canter. The pink mare opened her eyes and looked their way happily. Her smile was lost to a thoughtful frown as Rainbow Dash came to a stop in front of her.
Hi.
Rainbow uttered awkwardly when she realized she hadn't exactly thought this through. The pink mare suddenly gasped and grabbed Rainbow by the cheeks, pulling her in and looking her over in excruciating detail. Rainbow struggled a bit, now very uncomfortable.
You.
The pink mare whispered in an unsettlingly high-pitched voice.
I remember you.
Was all Rainbow could manage before the pink pony smiled widely.
You're Princess Rainbow Dash! Oh, wow! It's so nice to meet you. My name is Pinkie Pie, and it's just such a thrill to finally meet you. Considering I've hallucinated about you, I've heard about you for like years now. Oh, who are your friends here? The little purple guy's cute.
The pink pony, Pinkie apparently, and appropriately, splurged out in one long, uninterrupted stream of words. She then let go of Rainbow's face and took a step back.
Sorry.
Rainbow shook her head and then rubbed her cheeks to dispel some newfound aches on her face.
It's fine. Hi.
She mumbled, somewhat confused.
Wait.
Twilight suddenly butted into the discussion, stepping forward and looking at Pinkie with wide eyes.
You've hallucinated about Rainbow Dash before? Uh-huh. I've seen her in my head a few times, although she was never a princess in any of them.
Pinkie replied before smiling widely at Twilight.
And what's your name? I've never seen you before. Oh, my name's Twilight Sparkle.
Twilight began while standing a bit more straightly and putting on a more professional voice to match her duties here.
Rainbow Dash and I were actually sent to check up on and help with the preparations for the Summer Sun celebration. Do you happen to know where Sweet Apple Acres is? They're preparing the banquet, right?
Pinkie perked up happily.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna want to go all the way over there, take a left and another left, and... Oh, you know what?
She abruptly stopped before bouncing into the air, sailing over their heads, and then landing effortlessly behind the trio.
I'll just take you there.
What? Was all any of them had the chance to say before the pink pony placed her hooves on them and the roll turned into a blur of impossible winds. After several moments of panicked yelling and impossibly high speeds, they finally came to a stop with all three of them coming out of their movement rather ungracefully. Spike face planted into the dirt path, Twilight skidded along on her backside for almost a yard, and Rainbow flailed along before sprawling across the dirt on her back. Pinkie was still standing behind them and grinned expectantly. Spike pulled his face from the muck and, with a deep breath, said the following. What?
You're welcome. Nice to meet you all. Now, I've got things to prepare. See ya. La 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 la.
Pinkie chirped before bouncing away, happily singing some song or other to herself and leaving Rainbow, Twilight, and Spike to wonder what just happened. The group slowly pulled themselves back up off the ground, dusting themselves off and groaning in discomfort.
Oh, what even just happened?
Rainbow demanded before sighing and looking up. She recoiled slightly when she realized that, true to Pinkie's word, they were now standing at the entrance of Sweet Apple Acres. On the top of a hill they found themselves at the bottom of was a house, and, a little to the side, a sizable and aged-looking barn house. The apple trees around them were evenly spaced out in a neat, orderly grid-like pattern, with some of the ones further in having 4 or 5 sizable buckets encircling them on the ground.
Huh. What do you know? Okay, remind me to not stand in her way when she's in a hurry.
Twilight groaned before looking to Spike to make sure he was all right. Once she was sure all was in order, she straightened her posture and set off down the road.
Okay, come on. She at least saved us some travel time, so let's not waste it. Fair enough,
Was all Rainbow had to say before falling into stride next to Twilight. Several minutes went by in relative silence. A breeze went through the area after a moment, softly rustling the leaves and branches. The air felt different than in Canterlot, Rainbow noticed immediately. She was hesitant to call it fresher, but she would definitely call it richer. Her musings were interrupted, however, when a loud and energetic "Yee-haw!" reached the group's ears, bringing them all to a halt. Off to their left was an apple tree with buckets in place beneath it and an orange pony mare with 3 apples as a cutie mark charging it. She came to a stop, turned in place, and slammed her hind legs into the trunk in a powerful buck. Rainbow's eyes twitched slightly as she noticed the definite precision of the kick. This mare had very good aim. That was unquestionable. The apples in the branches shook before, in short order, they all plummeted from their places and into the buckets below. Not a single one missed, causing Rainbow to let off an impressed whistle. The mare looked up upon hearing that, and then swiftly dropped into a respectful bow after a moment of processing who it was she was seeing. Rainbow slapped her face with a forehoof.
Yeah, no, none of that. Rise and speak freely. I don't like ponies really recognizing my rank,
she said before the mare could start uttering any sort of royal greeting or whatever. The mare complied and cleared her throat while standing tall again.
Right. I'm Applejack, Your Majesty. Rainbow Dash. What can I do for you?
Rainbow looked at Twilight.
Well, I don't need much, actually. It's Twilight here who's going to be doing most of the talking.
Twilight took that as her cue and cleared her throat.
Yes, my name is Twilight Sparkle, and I've been sent by Princess Celestia to oversee the preparations for the Summer Sun celebration. I take it you're in charge of the food? Well, howdy do, Miss Twilight. It's a pleasure meeting you. Yep, Sweet Apple Acres here's got one hootin' any of a banquet ready to go for tonight. Want to sample some of the food?
Applejack asked with a warm smile before she looked at Twilight a bit more closely. Her smile twisted with a hint of uneasy recognition.
Hold on. Have we met before?
She asked a moment later. Twilight paused and raised an eyebrow.
I don't think so. Why?
Applejack narrowed her eyes a bit before sighing and shaking her head.
Nah, forget it. Just my imagination, I guess. Anywho, about the sampling?
She asked, regaining her friendly smile and tone.
Only as long as it doesn't take too long. We're kind of on a tight schedule,
Twilight replied while glancing down at Spike, who nodded to confirm that he was ready to proceed.
Do you have to-go boxes?
Rainbow asked, prompting an amused snort from Applejack.
No, we don't. First time any ponies asked me that.
Applejack said with an intrigued smirk growing on her face. Rainbow shrugged.
Can't blame me for trying. Now, about those samples. Do you think that farm mirrors had flashes too?
Twilight suddenly asked, about 20 minutes later as the trio was ascending from Sweet Apple Acres into Ponyville proper again. Rainbow glanced at Twilight with a raised eyebrow.
Huh? What makes you ask? That mirror and I have never met, but I think I've caught glimpses of her in some of the flashes I've had over the years. And I think I'm starting to notice a pattern with them. And the ponies that have them.
Twilight started to explain before looking around to make sure no pony was eavesdropping.
My first flash included Fluttershy, right? Your first one included that Pinkie Pie from earlier. Fluttershy had her first flash and it was about you. I think I see what you mean.
Rainbow interrupted carefully, a thoughtful frown also appearing on her face.
All of the ponies that we know of who have had these flashes saw each other in them, and either know each other or have met at some point, usually. Right,
Twilight confirmed.
The only exception I can think of is that shared flash you and I had in Cloudsdale. Yeah, and that one was very different. We were both seeing each other in that one.
Rainbow nodded slowly. For a moment, the two were silent. Rainbow then glanced up at the clock tower that stuck up from behind some of the houses and cringed.
Oh, we'll have to continue this discussion later. I need to go clock in for cloud busting. Do you even know where the weather team office is?
Twilight asked while Rainbow lifted into the air on her wings.
Nope, but I can always ask.
Rainbow replied before turning and sailing off into the sky.